Life is a mountain, and getting over it with Bennett Foddy is a game about climbing that mountain alone. Did you know Bennett Foddy played bass in a band? No, like really. It was an electronic music group called Cut Copy. The fact that he would later become a game designer after that was destiny at that point. He was first asked to join the band by his childhood friend Dan Whitford in 2001. But by 2004, Foddy had grown tired of the party life and chose to focus on his philosophy studies instead. The dude even had a doctoral degree, and chose to continue college life well into 2008 when he made the internet-destroying game QWOP. I'm sure longtime viewers of Charlie, Moist Critical, recognize that nightmare of a game.
What's up everybody, it's Critical, and this is a video for the most difficult game I've ever played in my life. It's called QWOP.
Foddy even had his own website, foddy.net, where he posted many of his games for free. I spent hours playing them while at work between calls, and then at home. Many of his games are challenging, unfair, absurd, some are hard on the eyes, and downright demoralizing. And I loved every single one of them.
There's no feeling more intense than starting over.
Mr. Foddy's flagship title, Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy, starts with a pot and a hammer, and then a man named Diogenes comes out of said pot to grab the hammer. And so, our ascent up the mountain and collective descent into madness begins. When it comes to flavors of frustration, Getting Over It offers the most poignant of the bunch, starting over. Having to put in tremendous amounts of effort only to have it come crashing down on us as we fall over and over again, it can get to be a bit much. For me, however, I was able to thoroughly enjoy my experience playing Getting Over It. I went into it with the mindset that I was going to inevitably fall a lot, and when I did, I simply laughed. I knew it was going to happen regularly. That's just how the game was designed. And through my persistence, I was able to get a good sense of how the game controlled. I learned I could keep my hammer steady while falling to either prevent myself from pushing off something to make me fall further, or even to catch on to something to stop my fall altogether. I figured out pull pogos and push pogos. I became intimately familiar with the textures of every surface and how the hammer would interact with them. By the end of my first playthrough, I had spent 10 hours reaching the top. My next playthrough took 4 hours. My third took 30 minutes. And this progression continued through over the course of about 100 clears until eventually I got a magical 5.5 minute run. The thing about speedrunning this game, and really almost any game, is that you don't go fast to go fast. You go slow to cut out mistakes to go fast. And once you're not making any mistakes, that's when you can start speeding up your movements to further decrease your times. I would say about 90% of the improvements anyone makes in doing anything involves eliminating mistakes or inefficient actions. Once you do that, you become a force to be reckoned with. Even if you're not necessarily at the tippy top of your field, you're still much more competent than the average person. That's because the average person hasn't put in the same amount of time or effort. This is also why anyone who's average at something shouldn't feel bad about not being great at it. No one's great at anything until they have experience, and I think we beat ourselves up far too often for it. Not all of us have the time to dedicate to becoming great at everything we do. At the end of the day, whether we're climbing a digital mountain, learning to cook, or finding and making friends, it's all optional.
Imaginary mountains build themselves from our efforts to climb them, and it's our repeated attempts to reach the summit that turns those mountains into something real.
It's sometimes said that life has no meaning except for that which we give it. The goals that we set for ourselves become the very things that give our lives meaning. Every day that we struggle to attain those goals, we face hardships, setbacks, delays, and even sometimes losing everything altogether. Well, that's why I love getting over it. It is a game of inches where you alone climb a mountain. You try, you struggle, you fall, and you learn. And each time that you manage to climb back up to where you were before, you've grown. Maybe this time you can get just a little bit further, or you end up falling again, but you keep going. And just like the goals we set in real life, the mountain we climb in getting over it is, in essence, a challenge of our own creation. Nothing is necessitating us to climb it outside of our own desire, or in the case of Markiplier, views.
What am I doing with my life? I could be doing anything, but no!
I feel within me a peace above all earthly dignities, a still and quiet conscience.
Anyways, many of us struggle with the non-negotiable constant of survival in life, but the beauty in setting our own goals is that we get to take them at our own pace. We can always click the quit button and come back to it later. Now, of course, I want to make a distinction here. The goals that are set for us by other people are different from those that we set for ourselves. One is driven by external expectation, and the other is by internal motivation. Big difference. Nothing in life is required of us. In the same way that the universe cares not for our existence, we don't owe the world anything. So as you're climbing your own mountains, be gentle with yourself. Realize that life is a game that we're all playing and we're all struggling with. Some of us may have harder or taller mountains to climb than others. Some of us were born into families that own climbing gear and others have none of that. Regardless, take heart knowing that even if you're climbing alone with no ropes and no one to catch you when you fall, you're still you. And you'll be you when you get back up.
It feels like we're closer now, composer and climber, designer and user. You could have refused, but you didn't. There was something in you that was hidden, that chose to continue.
In today's world, there's no denying that we've become increasingly atomized. Just as Diogenes climbs this absurd mountain of junk by himself, we feel as though we have to climb our own mountains alone. All too often, this isolation can become crippling. So much so that we may lose sight of why we began climbing in the first place. Some of us climb because we feel we have to. And while it is admirable to achieve goals that we set out for ourselves, it is just as admirable that we're surviving in a world that, at times, feels actively hostile to our existence. Whether it's divine retribution or good old-fashioned bad luck, and to quote Simple Flips,
sometimes life, throws a curveball or a wheelchair at you.
But when we finally do reach the summit, and we drift off into space, looking back at all we've done, the feeling can be quite lonely.